Welcome everybody to the SodiusWillert live Jira and Polarion ALM webinar. My name is Walter van der Heijden. You can call me Walter. I'm the Chief Technical Fellow at SodiusWillert, and I will be your host during this webinar. We are Sodius and Willert, and we merged about 2 years ago. It's a German company and a French-American company. What we do is designing, distributing software solutions for enterprise interoperability. So if you have different tools and you want to exchange tools, then you can exchange information between it. We do data transformation, model-based code generation, traceability exchange, hence the Polarion seminar that we now have. I would like to give the audience now to Mr. Polarion. Mr. Polarion, fill us in on Polarion OSLC.
Hey, thank you, Walter. Appreciate it, and appreciate you're here as well as Adrian from Siemens. Glad that we have a whole team here to be able to answer questions and be able to give a demo. Hopefully, we have actually more demo than we have slides today because I'm an engineer, like I think most everybody else is on the phone. We always like to see tools work more than people talk about tools. But with that being said, let's kind of go through a few things of what our target is. Walter did a great job here introducing us at SodiusWillert. Our whole idea here is to give you tools to help you build better products. And that's really our goal here. We have 3 pillars. Linked data is what we're going to talk about today. So how we connect tools. An example of that's our OSLC Connect for Jira that we'll focus on today. But we also have some model transformation tools and code generation tools. So we're deep down embedded engineers. We like being able to work with teams that are building products. That's our core, that's our foundation. When it comes to the products itself, we want to build tools that engineers want to use, that they're productive in. We know everybody has their own process, so it needs to be flexible to the needs that they have. And most importantly, these need to be able to work in the enterprise, meaning that your tools team, your IT team need to be able to deploy these. They need to meet the goals that your teams have in terms of security, performance, scalability. We've all been on that side before. We understand those concerns, and that's what we value in terms of delivering products. So let's talk about this product in particular and what we're trying to do to streamline the engineering lifecycle. As you probably understand, OSLC, seeing it's in the title of our product, our OSLC Connect products, is kind of important to us. It's a standard out there. Many large industrial companies started to work with it well, probably around 10 years or so ago. There were some early developments and deliveries by some IBM tools that implemented that, but we actually see a broader implementation in the market today than we had in the past. It's one of the reasons why we're excited to be able to work with Siemens and why we're excited the growth in the marketplace, because OSLC allows us to do a couple things. One, it allows us to preserve repositories. So we're not going to copy data between different tools because we don't want to, as well as they all have different data models. They have value with the information they have, so let's keep that data there. We also want to be able to support linking across projects, meaning that we know that we have change tools that work with requirements tools, that work with test tools. We don't want to force people into using one particular tool, but we do know that they need to use a collection of tools. So let's actually support how those tools can work together and how they can link those relationships together. And it's enterprise approved. We have lots of teams that are using OSLC. It addresses those concerns of how do we do connections, how do we do connections securely, how do we manage the data around it. Those are the types of things that we're trying to support with this standard. And then we have imperatives from the user perspective. I mean, these are the end goals that decide whether or not our tool is successful or not. Things that come out of OSLC that a user prefers is we can simply navigate between repositories by following web links. So you'll see today we'll go from Jira to Polarion and back again just by navigation through a web browser. It's a simple way to be able to work. It's seamless on how we integrate. We have visualization of selectors of artifacts, pickers, as you might say. How do I pick an artifact out of Jira from Polarion? How do I pick a Polarion artifact out of Jira? All those types of things are the native flows that users have. And our whole goal here is to ease the process flow. So how do I work across these different tool chains? And how do I have artifact access? So I need to be able to see information. I need to do reporting on information. Those things have to happen across repository. OSLC helps me do that. Now, how do we do that with OSLC Connect for Jira? For those of you that are familiar with Jira, which I think is most of us, have some touching point with the Atlassian tools at some point. But what Jira does very well, what Atlassian does very well, is they have a marketplace that allows you to be able to have tool vendors like ourselves to build plugins. So it's a native extension for Jira. So it's something you're going to access from the marketplace, install in your Jira environment using all the standard APIs that Atlassian provides and supports. And notably, it supports for both Jira Software Server as well as Jira Data Center. And a couple notes on Jira Data Center. When we get approved for Jira Data Center, that means that Atlassian does an architecture review. They have a astute performance testing review because they want to make sure that in that enterprise environment, we are not going to degrade the performance of your Jira Data Center implementation. That's critical to them. It's critical to us. We like that they have that capability. So any tool that you're seeing that's actually on the marketplace supporting Jira Data Center, it's been validated for those types of things. We do that on an annual basis, and we're happy that that's there. From what do we do in terms of that plugin? What we're providing is these OSLC interfaces. So how do servers collaborate? How do we link artifacts? How do we do previews of information? How do we make that information accessible for reporting through tracked resource sets and resource shapes? But the nice thing about this, it allows us to be able to preserve the same Jira experience. We don't want to have Jira users have to learn something new. We want to have the same UI, and we want to have the same workflow, same feel and experience. So the whole goal here is we're going to extend the opportunity for your organization to leverage the tools you already have. Allows you to be able to hit these audit and compliance capabilities that you need to have, so traceability across these tools, across these repositories. And best yet, it allows you to be able to have the tools of choice. So that your teams are productive with the tools they have today. Let's make them more productive by connecting those tools together. So our goals when we do this is to be able to make sure that we can enact your process. So that means that we're not going to change how you work. We're going to change how the tools connect to each other so you can work the way you want. And it really allows you to optimize your business to the practices that you want to do. So focus on your process, focus on your engineers do work, not how you synchronize data back and forth between tools. And the nice thing about this is it's safe and secure, meaning the way in which information's managed. We're not making replications, so we don't have synchronization problems. We're always making sure we have authorized access to information. So yeah, so on this is we'll get this experience in the demo of a solution for engineers, meaning that from a Jira perspective, you're going to have access to Polarion artifacts within Jira. So native type of interface from Jira, JQL support if you want to do queries of information. You're going to have dialogues and previews that are look and feel like Jira because they are. That's what our extension provides. The nice thing then is it's also going to provide you access to that Polarion information from Polarion live and dynamic views within Jira. From the other perspective, it's the Siemens experience. So when I'm in the Siemens tool, when I'm in Polarion, I'm going to have access to my Jira artifacts natively, have rich previews, be able to access those artifacts, same look and feel of Polarion, and be able to have access and controls of the information with the custom OSLC mapping that we can do in Polarion. So it's very powerful. It doesn't change the user experience, it changes the user's capabilities. Now, what's nice about the OSLC integration in Polarion? So Polarion provides a set of OSLC services, but they have some unique elements associated with it. Number one is they have a much more flexible OSLC semantics, meaning that they can be able to map your definition of your Polarion types to the OSLC standard. It gives you a lot of flexibility to keep the definition you have today and simply map it to the relationship types that the OSLC standard has. It really allows you to be able to be selective on what things from Polarion you want to export to the Jira interface and how accessible that information is, as well as keep your process flow the way that you've already had it, just adding Jira into the picture, and we'll see that live. We also can create our own kind of project enterprise, meaning that we'll start out with that. We'll start about creating project relationships so we can relate and tie together our Jira projects with our Polarion projects to be able to make sure your project teams understand the tools that they need to connect and use. And then what's been unique in one of the later releases of Polarion is extending this OSLC world to the types of things that we always want to do. We'll show a demo here, but it has a Polarion view that looks a lot like what we would do if we're synchronizing data, but it's live dynamic OSLC data presented in a table. And so we'll talk about how we can leverage that to be able to give you instant access view of live information within Polarion without having to do things like rich dialogues and navigate to artifacts to be able to get data. It's a really powerful way, and we see growth along that path. So let's go ahead and show this tool in action. We're going to do a demo here. We want to focus on some pragmatic use cases, requirements to implementation. I also have a little bit of test cases in there as well, so you have an idea of how flexible this interface is. And we're going to do some navigation previews, type of user interfaces that our engineers are typically going to use. We're not going to focus on deep content here, but we want to show you the touch of what it looks like within that tool. So with that, I'm going to transition over, and we're going to be able to take a look at familiar interfaces that I think most everybody has seen before. We'll take a look at Polarion, we'll take a look at Jira, and I'll walk you through the types of experiences and things that you have. So first, in Polarion, we're going to talk about how we actually do a little bit of the configuration. So first of all, what I talked about was that we create project enterprises, meaning how do we connect tools together? And that's the power of OSLC. So if I look at this linked data associations that I have within the Polarion environment, what it allows me to do is be able to pick and choose my friends I'm associated with it. So these are different repositories. So I can go ahead and pick one of my Jira repositories here. And then I'm allowed to be able to pick which of the projects within that repository I want to connect to. So I already have a project association right now with a demo environment I have, but this gives you a sense. You can connect to one Jira project, you can connect to many Jira projects, you can connect to many different Jira servers at the same time. You have that ability to be able to create that enterprise, that relationship between your different artifacts and repositories. It's a great way to be able to bring tools together at the integration level. When it comes to operating within Polarion itself, I mean, we're going to take a look at just some basic examples here. Let me kind of show you. We're looking at system specification here. You can see some first identifiers here of just the types of integration that we have. So on some sample requirements here, we already have some relationships to some Jira artifacts here. So you're going to be able to see links and link relationships on these. If we went even further and actually went and let's just create something new. Do some dynamic stuff here, which is always fun when we're doing demos. We can be able to show people things live, see how it performs, see how it works when we're doing live demos here. We can just create a sample requirement here, go ahead and save it. That way we get a fresh requirement that we can be able to create some links on. So a few things here. So I can navigate to this requirement here. Let's open up that item. And what we're going to get is our normal Polarion view. What's nice about this is the way OSLC is integrated within Polarion. It is native to the linking flow that they have. So for example, on my links here, I can go ahead to edit my links. What you're going to see here is if I pick, let's do like an implements relationship, you're going to find that some of these relationships show this third icon here. So what this third icon is indicate that this is an OSLC target. And from this, when I go to create a link to an artifact, you're going to see that I have my project association that I had before. So it knows which Jira project I want to connect to. It's not like I'm randomly connecting to any Jira artifact that there is. And I can do one of two things. I can go ahead and select an item. So if I want to be able to select a relationship, it would give me a selection dialog that I can go ahead and be able to have filters, be able to sort through the types of artifacts that I might want to look at. So these are all your Jira filters to be able to access this. So let me go back and we can connect to an existing epic. We can select that. And it allows this filter to be able to create those relationships. And you'll be able to see right away that we have rich previews. We can see that artifact within Jira and be able to see the details about that. In fact, I can go ahead and go even farther, and let's go ahead and we can create another implements relationship here too. And not only can I create a link to an existing artifact, I can create a new item if I want to. So if I want to be able to create a new item, I can be able to bring up a new dialog. I can always change the type if I want to. And it's going to present to me my Jira interface to be able to create that artifact and create that type. It gives me a lot of power to be able to do. Let's just create a story. Some description. But you're going to be able to use the widgets that you know within Jira because it looks and feels exactly like Jira because it is Jira. I can even assign it to somebody if I want, be able to assign this maybe to Bob. I can go ahead and assign it to anything that I want. So I can populate that information. What's great is I don't have to leave Polarion to be able to do that. I can create that artifact in Jira, and you're going to see that item show here immediately. So I can go ahead and save my Polarion artifact, and it gives me a good sense of what's here. A couple things to pay attention here. We do allow some differences here, meaning when I do this rich preview, you're going to see that we can customize these previews based on the type. So my story might have some different data elements than my epic does. So you're going to see my epic just has a plain field tab. In my story, I have a specialized set of fields associated with the story. So you can customize this based on your own scheme that you have in Jira. So you have full flexibility on how you want to leverage that, how you want to use that. So a lot of options to be able to operate. And so it gives you a really good experience to be able to interact with this. Now, the other thing I want to do before we follow one of these links is also show you a bit more of the power that we have within Polarion, which is to say that not only do I have this linked work item field, but I also have, and you can see this is actually a customized field down here. So this is something that came out in 21R1. It's actually a linked data view. It allows me to be able to create a table. What you're going to see from this is I actually have some dynamic information here that's being pulled from Jira. So in this case, my Jira ID, my status, what the priority is, all that information is actually dynamically being pulled from Jira. So even though it's presented in a table like this, it allows me to be able to pull information. So I have that visual information. So as I'm going through my Polarion artifacts, I can decide whether or not my information in Jira is up to date, what information I have. And in fact, I can customize that with whatever information I want. To give you a sense of that, we can actually give you a little preview, and we provide guides on how people can leverage this. This linked data appearance, right now you can see I have the Jira ID and the status and priority. I could also include in that table if I wanted the creation date, and it's as simple as being able to update an XML configuration. And once I do that, if I come back and reload my artifact over here within Polarion, we should see another field in that table. So what you put in that table, what you communicate to people that are looking at that information is entirely up to you. So now you can see, if I can scroll over the right here, you'll see the creation date shows up. All the information that you have in Jira is available to you to do that. We, as our OSLC provider, make sure that information is available based on the OSLC standard so that the Siemens Polarion tool can consume it. So it's a good balance in between having the live dynamic data and the look and feel of what we do typically with the synchronization. It's a good match. So this data is always going to be up to date. It's always going to be dynamically pulled when you load that Polarion artifact. So you know that it's the latest and greatest information, but it's presented in a way that you always have access to it. Now, it's nice to have views into that information, but you also want to be able to navigate and see the other side of that relationship as well. And what that means is I can navigate over into Jira with just a click of the button. And what we see here is some interesting elements. Number one is this is just going to be the same standard Jira look and feel as we expected before. What we also see here, though, is we have that rich preview that we'd expect, meaning that I can now see that artifact as it's presented within Polarion. And so the Polarion look and feel will be here, and we'll have access and details about that dynamically. And so what you see here is a live presentation of that information. So you'll see an updated description of it. You'll see an updated icon of it. You'll be able to see things like the status of it. And you'll also see a couple new things that we added in our latest release, which is that status and that priority are actually dynamic indicators on this. This was actually a request that some of our customers had that were familiar with Jira. They wanted to have some more visual evidence of what the status was of an artifact, because that changed their behavior as they were moving tickets, as they were looking at tickets. They wanted to understand maybe if a requirement was in a draft state, if it's an approved state. It helps them make decisions on what behaviors they should do. And to give you a sense on how dynamic this information is, if I come back over here into my artifact within Polarion, I could do things like I could update title. I could go ahead and do something like, let's go ahead and change the status of the artifact. And then the nice thing about OSLC is always dynamically pulling that information. So you'll see a couple things happen when I go back over to Jira. Number one is if I open Jira into a new view, it'll dynamically pull it. If any time that I do one of these rich hovers, you will see that it will automatically pull the latest information to it. And so you'll see whenever I do a rich hover, that's always a new dynamic pull of information. So it's always making sure that you have the latest requirement, the one you should be looking at. When it comes to these annotations in terms of this title and these indicators here, it's going to be on the latest time that you opened up this web page. So if I do a quick refresh of this web page, you'll see this title is updated. You'll see that we're actually in a reviewed state. And so we see visual evidence in terms of where we're at, what kind of status we are, and be able to have information like that. So it's really powerful for us to be able to make sure that our Atlassian users are in sync with our Polarion users. Now, the types of things that we saw before from the Polarion side also apply on the Jira side, meaning that if I need to create some more links, I can. This is part of what we've added to this product. It allows me to be able to take a look at a collaboration link, which is to us the OSLC links. I can go ahead, either create a new requirement, I can link to an existing requirement, and what you'll see is when I go to link to an existing requirement, you'll see an embedded Polarion dialog. So this is the dialog being provided to us by Polarion and says, hey, here's our list of requirements. If you want to create a relationship to one of these, go ahead and select that requirement. It's going to create a new link for us, and we're going to dynamically pull that information. We see that. So there's my other requirement there. You'll see that this one happens to be an approved state, so I get indicators of that information. So it gives me a good feel of that. The same thing goes if I want to create a new requirement. I can go ahead and do that same type of behavior, is be able to go ahead and create a new requirement and just simply fill in the form. It's going to give me a Polarion dialog that allows me to be able to create this artifact. This allows me to be able to let's do sample software. What this does is it gives me a great opportunity to be able to create artifacts dynamically and be able to populate descriptions, any of the fields that we'd expect within Polarion without ever leaving Jira. It might not necessarily mean that you're going to always create requirements this way, but it could be any other Polarion artifact. It could be a change request, it could be a test case. Any of these artifacts can be created dynamically from within the other tool. It makes the usage and the workflow simple and seamless. And if we navigate it over to that software requirement, which is just as simple as clicking a button, we're going to be back into Polarion and be able to have access to that information. And that really gives us a great way to be able to interact with these elements and be able to see, all right, how do we have these linked to artifacts? What are their relationships? What are the types of links that they have? And be able to have access to those from whatever tool that we're in. Really smooths out the workflow, make sure team stays in sync, and make sure that they're gonna work together. And so we do that to be able to make sure that that experience is what we expect it to be and how we want it to happen. In fact, when we come from, we saw a little bit of the configuration on the Polarion side. We have a lot of that same capability on the Jira side as well. So a few things that I want to touch on here to give you an idea of what you can do to integrate this with your enterprise. We're going to be able to have the ability to be able to do those project associations that you saw before. We do those from the Jira side as well. So in this case, I'm describing which types of interfaces I want to use. In this case, I want to have relationships to test artifacts, to defects, to requirements. Those are all relationships that I'm having to this Polarion sandbox project that I'm working on. But I can have that to be many different Polarion projects if I want. I have one Jira project that supports many of them. So we can work back and forth and be able to have that. Now, at a higher level, there's a few other things that make sense that we can take a look at. Number one is at the repository level, I do need to do some configurations. So, or I can do that. I have this power to be able to do this. A couple of things that might make sense for you to be able to visualize and understand. One of which is this issue type mapping. You saw when I created artifacts from within Polarion, I was defaulting to certain types depending on what I was creating. If I was creating an implementation request, I was always creating an epic. Your team has the ability to be able to customize this to whatever scheme you have within Jira. So if you want to create an epic, you want to create a story, you can be able to automatically configure what those default values are. It gives you a lot of power to be able to make sure that when I go to create a relationship, I create a relationship to the right Jira artifact that is my process that I want to be able to support. The other thing that I want to do, you saw I was creating implementation links from my Jira artifact. The way that we do that is we support the OSLC standard. But the OSLC standard has lots and lots of different link relationships. What we found is it's really important on specific artifacts to be able to scale down what types of relationships that I want to create. So what you'll see here is that for different artifact types in my scheme, I've said for particular types, these are the types of relationships I want to create. So if I'm an epic, I'm going to always default to creating an implements requirement relationship. And then of all the OSLC type relationships, I'm going to create only a smaller set of these instead of overwhelming users with all the different relationship types that they might want to create. I'll narrow it down to a smaller set. It makes that usability better. It makes adherence to the process better. It makes all the activities that we might do about reporting that much more effective. And so it allows you to be able to shape this to the type of relationship that you want to have. Within Polarion, there's very similar features that allow you to be able to do the same type of thing. I'll be able to say, for my Polarion artifacts, here's what OSLC interfaces they want to support. Here's the type of relationships they want to support. It's really powerful that you can have both sides of that integration allow that level of configurability. And then the other part that I want to show, and we'll do a couple little more demos, and then we'll get to your Q&A because I've probably been giving you lots of information here to get started, but also on the issue shapes. So what we know when we look at any of our projects or schemes that we have within Jira, we have not only the native set of attributes that we always have, we also have some customized attributes that we might be able to say, hey, I want to put story points and be able to add these into my table that we saw in Polarion or eventually in some reports. What we can do is make sure that we expose that information. We expose that information, what we call an issue shape, so that any OSLC tool can consume that information and be able to leverage that within a report that they might be writing. And this allows, when we're using Polarion in either a table or within some of the reporting in the more recent releases, we have access to that information, which means that I have one place I can do reporting across my entire enterprise. And that's going to be very, very important as we look at things like traceability. And then I hinted a little bit to issue previews. this is really where we allow you to be able to customize that experience, meaning when I'm in Polarion and I look back into Jira, what information should I see? And it allows me to be able to customize based on each type, what should be included in that rich preview. There's some basic information that's in all of them, but obviously I might want to see different information on a bug report than I would necessarily on a story. And we give you the ability to be able to configure that, and we allow you to be able to simply leverage what you're already doing in Jira, which is using screens and screen definitions to describe which set of attributes you want to include on those rich previews. So it gives you a lot of feel to be able to work back and forth on those. And then one last thing on the configuration side that we have a lot of customers leveraging right now, which is this link appearance. What this is that priority and status attribute that we're dynamically pulling from Polarion. You can actually add some graphics to this. You can use icons, you can use some coloring. The whole idea here is to be able to make sure that you have some visual indicators so that people make good decisions based on that information. And that's really our target here, is to be able to make sure that you are being able to leverage the information as it makes sense to you and your team. So that's really the target here. That's what we're looking for. That's what we want to be able to make sense. So a couple of final things, and then we'll get back to some Q&A. Number one, we talked about being able to leverage information that's just different types. We focused on the requirements to change request linkage. We also want to let you know that we also support the ability to be able to link to change requests within Polarion, as well as in this case, we're actually showing a test case link. So this is a link to a test case within Polarion. You have all these rich type of relationships that we can create as we interact with our system. Now, what we found is that even though people are using web browsers and they're interacting via these types of systems, we all know that drag and drop is actually a useful way for us to interact, especially when we have some of the larger screens that some of us might have on our desktop. So let me see if I can manage a couple screens here. But one of the ways in which people create relationships and create linkages, get my windows behave themselves right now, is be able to just drag and drop their different requirements to create linkages. So in this case, it's one of the interfaces that we like and we like to support, is we can just drag a particular requirement onto a Jira ticket. It's going to give us that dialogue. It's going to be able to tell us, in this case, I dragged it onto a tracks relationship, which is actually for a change request. I can say that, well, actually what I meant was an implements requirement relationship. It's going to validate that it's the right artifact for that type of link, and I can create that link. So without going through one of those pickers, if I have my requirements document up, I can be able to bring over, drag and drop different requirements over to my Jira ticket and create interfaces just like that. So that is super powerful. The one last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to just give you a short preview of some exciting things that are coming out of the Polarion 21 R2 release that we are super excited about. That is on the reporting side. So, and we'll give you a kind of example of what we were doing before in terms of reporting when it came to OSLC data within Polarion. The table edition in 21R1 was super powerful for us to be able to get more Jira data visible within Polarion. In 21R2, we're going another level beyond that. So in this case, this is the basic report that we typically had within Polarion before. It's gonna, because it is using OSLC data, require us to log in. It was a valuable report because it allowed us to be able to show linked data. So in this case, it's showing that I have different artifacts within another repository on my report, so I know I have traceability. That was valuable. What it didn't do was allow us to be able to provide information about those specific Jira issues, what the status was, what the information was. What's come out in 21R2 that we're super excited about is this. It looks like a very simple report right now because it's just a simple report that I wrote. But what it does, it allows us to be able to provide a new interface that allows us to access OSLC information. So this is actually dynamic information from Jira included in the Polarion report, to the extent that I now can have access to the ID, the title, the Jira status, what that link relationship is, what the priority is, and it's fully customizable. So we won't dive into the details of it, but let me show you real quick the type of information that we're dealing with. We can actually now customize fully how we want to show that information, what data I want to access. And you'll see that this isn't just standard OSLC data. We actually have a few of these that are actually Jira specific data elements that are included and rendered in this report. So it gives you a lot of freedom to be able to take advantage of your whole enterprise data within the Siemens environment. So we're super excited about that and happy as we see more and more of our customers leveraging it. So with that, that kind of wraps up a bit of kind of the demo. Let me kind of go back to a few more slides, and we'll do some Q&A. What we've seen as we've been working with teams is that there's some critical outcomes of using OSLC Connect for Jira with their solutions. The most immediate benefit that we've seen is we're able to pull these teams together. So our requirements team and our software team have much more collaboration, meaning that the Atlassian users are actively working with the Polarion users. They're sharing information, they're sharing dynamic information. It's a much more seamless environment. People aren't working off of exported specs. They're just having a much tighter relationship, much faster operation and activities than they have before. The other thing that's critical, and you saw a little bit of this with us putting widgets on there, much with Siemens adding new capabilities, whether it's reporting or whether it's visualizing the table information, we want to enact process. We capture data for engineering teams for a reason, because they need to do traceability. We need to leverage that traceability information to make good decisions. We also want to support that. So we're going to give visual indicators when people should be able to make good decisions. That's what those link decorators that I was showing you about status and priority are. And then coming up in the next couple weeks, we'll have a new release of our product that goes one step further. And we're super excited about this. And you'll probably see some videos on our site the next couple weeks in terms of how we can make OSLC more actionable. So we'll have a validator included within Jira that allows you to be able to make rules on when you can transition state based on linked data. So think of this as you can't start your Jira implementation task on requirements until all the requirements are approved, and implement that as a process flow and be able to make sure that enforcement's there to be able to make life and process more dynamic with your teams. So it's where OSLC is going, it's where our tooling is going to really help you and your engineering teams do what you need to do. And then we always get this question of, how do I get started with this? We try to make this as simple as possible. We believe that people should try before they buy, and that's really a dynamic of the Atlassian marketplace as well. So it's on the marketplace, OSLC Connect for Jira. You can install it from the marketplace. Once you install it, you'll be able to have an easy license form in the admin window that you can send us an email to generate a license key for you. We'll be able to give you access to our knowledge base and configuration guides for you to be able to maximize the value of working with Polarion and Jira, and you'll be able to use it in your environment. We encourage you to do so. We welcome you to do so. It's a good way to be able to interact both with our product, but also with our support team to be able to make sure that you have access to the right things and the right elements. So appreciate everybody taking the time today. I've been talking quite a bit here, so I'm going to hand the mic back over to Walter as I take a drink, and he's going to go ahead and let us know what questions have been coming in as we've been chatting here and as we've been demoing.